Unmute. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Lamed Ches, Maseches Pesachim. Should be a quicker one today. So we left off at the bottom of Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. Last word, third line. So Amar Ravasi. So it says Ravasi, Isa Shal Meiser Sheni L'Divrei Rameir P'tur Min Achal. So we're still discussing. We're sort of going back and forth. We're talking about bread. So obviously, when it comes to bread, there's bread. Same ingredients can be made into matzah, called lechem, lechemoni. But also lechem is also referred to for the mitzvah of challah, hafrashas challah. So there are different things that a person or different challahs or breads that one can use for matzah and one cannot use for matzah. So too when it comes to challah, right? Certain challahs are not able to go ahead and become and don't require hafrashas challah, as Ravasi says. So Isa shel ma'aser sheni, if the dough ma'aser sheni, right? So ma'aser sheni was something that it was part of the, you give ma'aser rishon to Levi, ma'aser sheni. Now you have the second 10th. So usually that is produce, something that grow from the ground that either you go ahead and you bring to Yerushalayim to consume there, or you go ahead and redeem it into money. So if you had the dough that was Meiser Sheni from the grain of Meiser Sheni, so according to Rameir, P'tur Min Achal is Patur Min Achal, because Rameir, as Rashi brings down in Maseches Kedushin, learns that Meiser Sheni is called Mamon Gavoa. Right, it's called basically Hashem's money. Right, there's some sort of sanctity to Ma'aser Sheni. Obviously, you have eaten Yerushalayim. So according to Rameir, it's because that sanctity is Mamun Gavoa. It's like Hashem's money. Therefore, from Hashem's money, you don't have to go ahead and separate that and give to a Kohen. Right, that's not required. So we said Isa Shal Ma'aser Sheni L'Divrei Rameir P'tur Min Achala L'Divrei Chamim who hold that no, it really is considered to be Mamun Hedyot. Right, it's private money, and just there's restrictions to this private money. It has to be in Yerushalayim. So L'Divrei Chamim Chayavas. One is obligated to go ahead and be mafresh challah. Turn the page. Matzah shel ma'aser sheni. Now, the same concept. So the matzah that comes from ma'aser sheni, you have ma'aser sheni, you bake matzahs out of it. The divrei meir, you can be in Yerushalayim, right? You're staying at the Citadel or the Waldorf. You take your ma'aser sheni, right? And you're in Jerusalem. And according to Rameir, you cannot fulfill your obligation. Pesach will explain why that is. And the Divrei Chamim, according to the Chamim, who holds is considered to be Mamon Hedyot. A person can't fulfill his obligation on Pesach. And Esrog, also an Esrog, a citron, right, that comes from Ma'aser Sheni. L'Divrei Meir, according to Rameir, a person cannot go ahead and fulfill his obligation of taking esrog from Ma'aser Sheni, if this is from his crop, according to Rameir, because it's considered to be Mamun Gavoa, and the person can't fulfill his obligation. So now we're going to ask, so Rav Papa, so Bishlama Isa, so Rav Papa started asking, not explaining this brayso, some cases not. So Bishlama Isa, I understand when it comes to do, Dichsiv, Arisosechem, Mishelachem. So according to there, it says from your dough, right? Your dough, not Hashem's dough. So it makes sense, according to Rameir, why Ma'aser Sheni is pater from challah. Bishalachem, it has to be of yours. And esrog nami, also when it comes to an esrog, d'chsiv lakachtem lachem, right? You should take from yours, right? Lachem mishalachem. It has to be of yours, i.e., from mamon, your own mamon, and not mamon gavoa. According to Rameir, that would exclude Ma'aser Sheni. Elo matzah, but it comes to the matzah, miksiv matzaschem. Does it say it has to be your matzah? It has to be matzah from your private money, right? Why can't you use, even if you consider it mamun gavo, why can't you use it to fill the obligation of matzah? So Marabov, Yitema Rav Yemer bar Shlamia. So Asya lechem. You learn Gzer Shavav lechem. Ksiv hach. It says over here lechem oini. It says by the mitzvah matzah, it says lechem oini. Ksiv hasam says over there in the case of when you over there eat lechem haaretz, samalo mishalachem, just like over there, it was called mishalachem. By challah, we said it restricted has to be of yours. Afkan, so too over here, when it comes to matzah, mishalachem. We learned the gzer shav lechem to teach you that just like challah has to be from your mamon hedyot, so too the matzah should come from your private funds and not come from Ma'aser Sheni. So Lema Masaile, let's say this Bryce is a good proof. So Isa Shal Ma'aser Sheni, when it comes to the dough of Ma'aser Sheni, P'tur Min Achalas, Pater Min Achala, Divrei Meres Bin Rameir, Chamim Chayeves, Chum says you're Chayev. So the Gemara says, Lema Messiah. Let's say this is a proof. Hainu hach. This is exactly what we said. Don't say this might be a proof. Say this is. You have a brisa. Tiny. You should say tiny kavase, not Lema Messiah. Tiny kavase. So he says no. Hachi kamar. This means to say Lema miflagi beisa behinach pligis. Just like there's a machlekes between Rameir and Chachamim when it comes to Ma'aser Sheni, when it comes to the obligation of challah. So too, we'll say it's the same machlokes that applies also by the case of matzah. Oh, Dilma, Shani Hasa, maybe over there, the Chassid Arisa Sechem, Trey Zimne. Maybe it says Arisa Sechem 2 times, and therefore, since it says it 2 times, so therefore it tells you it has to be really of yours, and therefore the other case doesn't mention by matzah that 2 times or 2 gzer shavas, and therefore maybe it's dafka challah has to be of yours in order to be chayav to be challah, but maybe matzah that belongs to Ma'aser Sheni, right? You could possibly say there's room to say that maybe you're not that you could fulfill your obligation from matzah made from Ma'aser Sheni. Fine, that was part 1. Now next case, completely different, or not completely different, but different. All right, so we are in the middle of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, last word of the line, middle of the page. Boy Reb Shimon ben Lakish. So Reb Shimon ben Lakish asks the kasha: Mahu sheyatza adam yidei chavaso bechala shel Ma'aser Sheni b'Yushalayim. Can a person, a Kohen, fulfill his obligation, right, with chala of Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim? All right. In other words, you have somebody, the Kohen is Yerushalayim, and there was Ma'aser Sheni that was brought in, right, according to the side of the Chachamim, right? So then the challah was given Yerushalayim. So he says, "Ma'ush yatsi b'chasa b'challah shel Ma'aser Sheni Yerushalayim." So he's given challah. Can he use that challah that this Kohen, right, that he was given, use it for the mitzvah of matzah in Yerushalayim? So according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, it's not a kashta. Why? It's a hashta b'chulun lo nafik b'chalas lo nafi b'chalas miboy. Right. So he said, a person, right, he can't fulfill his obligation even, right, with chulun of Ma'aser, right, of Ma'aser Sheni, right, of regular Ma'aser Sheni, right. So in other words, it's stuff that's not challah, because we learned over there, because we learned b'chol moshe seichem has to be able to take it out, and once Ma'aser Sheni is in Yerushalayim, it can't be taken out. So according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, since it doesn't apply b'chol moshe seichem, this Ma'aser Sheni, so you can never use Ma'aser Sheni. So certainly challah from Ma'aser Sheni certainly cannot fulfill one's obligation of matzah. So ki diboy lecha. So Reish Lakish asks, according to Rabbi Akiva. But when it comes to chulin, the reason why a person can go ahead and use that dough for matzah, why di mitamu? Because you're going to say, if it becomes tameh, yeshlan hetem b'moshavos, you're allowed to go ahead and redeem it, and now take that outside of Yerushalayim, and then you can eat it in b'chol moshvosechem, and in all your dwellings, in your house in Ramat Gan, right? You can eat it anywhere. So since it can be eaten anywhere, right, Ma'aser Sheni, so therefore you can fill your obligation of matzah with it. So according to Rabbi Kiva, so regular Ma'aser Sheni you can fill your obligation. But what about the challah, right, that was taken from the Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim, give it to a Kohen? Can he use that for his matzah? About challah, but maybe by challah, if it comes tamei less head to moshavos, all right, and you're really not allowed to go ahead and take it out. Well, the sreifa azla. Right, and therefore it has to be burnt, because if it becomes tummy, you can no longer redeem it, and therefore you have to go ahead by challah, you have to burn it. You can't redeem it. The seifa azla loy nafik, and therefore he can't fulfill his obligation, because the whole heter was, if Ma'aser Sheni becomes tummy, I can go ahead and redeem it and eat it outside. But you don't have that application by challah, because if challah becomes tummy, right, you can't go ahead and redeem it and eat it outside. You can't take it out anymore, right? Or Dilmar, perhaps we say, Amrina Hoel the Ilulay Kara Aleha Shame. If you didn't go ahead and make it challah, if you easily had the mashavas, and you didn't make a challah, basically, because regular Ma'aser Sheni became tamei, you would be able to go ahead and redeem it and take it outside Yerushalayim, so v'nafik ba, and you'd be able to fulfill your obligations. So hashtanami nafik. So to now you can go ahead and take it out and fill, and you can say you can fill your obligation. So that was one question, right? So there was, do we say that since if he didn't make a challah, he would be able to take it out? So to now that it was made challah, right? So it still qualifies as being able to, as b'chol moshvasechem, and therefore one could fulfill his obligation with that with matzah.
Wait, hang on. I'm
Yeah.
always get confused with this. Is this about the Kohen using that challah to make matzah from?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
specifically about the Kohen, not about
Right.
anybody else.
Because once it's challah, then you can't. It's not yours, right? I mean, it can only go to a kohen. So can the kohen go ahead and use it for his matzah obligation? Right. So on one hand, you say, well, Meiser Sheni can be used according to Rabbi Kiva, because if it becomes Tameh, you're allowed to go ahead and take it out. So even now that it doesn't become Tameh, I can still go ahead and use it because it has the potential of B'chomash Vaseicha. But does this challah also carry that potential? Now, Lamaisa, because it was made challah, it doesn't carry that potential at all. It's impossible. But we say, had it not been the challah of the Meiser Sheni, it would have been able to take out. So maybe it still qualifies. So that was the shaila according to the second version, or according to the first version. Excuse me. Now we have an ikadamri. Some have another version with one more step. So ikadamri ha vade lo tiboy lecha. This question that's not a question. Why? The vade abrina. Certainly we say hoil ki tiboy lecha chala. Right. So this we say. So is that in that case we would say hoil. Right. We say hoil since if it was not made challah could be taken out. So too this challah qualifies as matzah of b'chol mashosecha. So what's the kasha? Ki tiboy lecha challah halakuach b'kesef ma'aser sheni. Right. Challah. Right, that was purchased with a kesef ma'aser sheni. All right, this is the money that was taken to Yerushalayim. With that, challah was so challah klobit because of ma'aser sheni. Someone brought his ma'aser sheni money to Yerushalayim. Right, he happened to be a kohen, and there was another kohen was given. He had portions of challah from other Yisraelim or whatever it is, and he wanted to use his kesef ma'aser sheni to purchase challah. All right, to purchase this bread from the other guy, and then now he wants to use that bread. Now, according to the Rabbanan in the machlokas which we're about to state, it's not a kash. Why? Since he says over there that if it becomes tamei, one can go ahead and still redeem it because it's not real ma'aser sheni, right? It's just the money that came from ma'aser sheni, right? That was the pidyon money that redeemed ma'aser sheni. So haina ma'aser. So we say over there. So it's no different ma'aser sheni. Just like kesef ma'aser sheni can be used. Right, so to so just like ma'aser sheni can be used because it becomes tummy, you can take it b'chomash vasechem. So to the money is no different, right? But this goes according to Rabbi Huda. The Amar, he doesn't say you can go ahead and redeem it. Rather, he says you have to go ahead and bury it. You can't use it anymore. The Tanan, who's learning the Mishnah, halakuach b'kesef ma'aser sheni shenitma. If one goes ahead and purchases food with the money ma'aser sheni, so now that which you bought sort of has the sanctity of kesef of ma'aser sheni, and that becomes tamei. So we had a machlokes when the actual ma'aser sheni becomes tamei. That was machlokes between Rabbi Yosef Glili and Rabbi Kiva. So now, not the ma'aser sheni itself, that was the crops that were brought into Yerushalayim became tummy. Rather, he brought money because he redeemed the food of ma'aser sheni. He didn't want to schlep all the food. He rather just put it in money, brought the money to Yerushalayim, bought food with that, and that food became tummy. And right, so the question is, what do you do? So go ahead and redeem it. And Rabbi Yehuda Imer, so that was the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan saying go ahead and redeem it. So he said that was not shas. So the question is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says you can't use it anymore. Bury it. Right now, mi amrina. Do we say hoil v'ilola kuachavi? Do we say two steps? Since if he didn't buy it, all right, if he didn't go ahead and use it and purchase challah, v'hoya also v'loy karala shame, and he wouldn't have gone ahead and called it right, and it wouldn't have had and called it challah, wouldn't have been challah, v'imtui, and it became tamei, right? Yesh laheter b'mashavos. This bread would have been fine for mashavos, right? No, as if the bread was just regular bread and not challah bread. So and then he didn't purchase it with kesef ma'aser sheni, right? Then lamaisa, it would be something which is redeemable. But mashavos, he can go ahead and take it out in the fields of nafik and use it for his obligation. How so? Hashtanami, maybe now so over here nafik he should be able to use it. Oh, Dilmar, perhaps. Chad hoil amrinan. We said over here one hoil. Since if he didn't make it, challah would have been okay. So, however, which is according to the lishna, the first lishna. Right. However, trey hoil lo amrina, but we don't say right like a double step. We don't say, hey, had he if he didn't go ahead and buy the challah with the money or the kesef ma'aser sheni, and even if he did go ahead and buy it, but if he didn't go ahead and purchase it challah, then it would have been qualified as moshavos. So is that okay? And Amar Rava, and Rava says mistava shem ma'aser chadu. Right? We said it is one shem meiser, and therefore, since it's still called meiser, so therefore, even though it's two hoils, right, in this case, it's still called meiser. Meiser sheni can be go ahead and, according to the opinion we said earlier, can be taken. It qualifies as bechol moshavos, right, bechol moshosechem. So it's over here. It would qualify that this kesef is not now tied to only Yerushalayim, because it had potential to not be tied to Yerushalayim, and therefore one could fulfill his obligation, right, with challah that this Kohen bought using his kesef ma'aser sheni. Fine, two dots at the bottom. Now it gets a little easier. So we discussed. We had the case of the Mishnah. I think we saw it yesterday. Let me see if I can find this Mishnah. Turn all these pages here. No, maybe it's page before. If I can find the Mishnah, it probably says where the Mishnah is. Where's the Mishnah? It doesn't say. All right, whatever. Fine. Anyway, so the Mishnah said, can't find it right now. Yeah. So the Mishnah said like this. If Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, right? So he says over there, the chalos and they were baked for a toda. We said a toda is brought with 40 loaves, and also for a nazir brings loaves. So if it was baked for that reason, so if he made it basically for that reason, a person cannot go ahead and change his mind and say, you know what, I know I made these matzahs for my korban toda. I'm going to use it Pesach night. You can't do that. You can't change it, your mind, even if you makdish it. And also limkor, but however, if he made these matzahs for the purpose of selling to nazirim who need it, or people who are coming to bring their korban toda, and then he didn't sell it, or he changes his mind, decides, you know what, I have them here, I'm not going to sell it, I'll just use it for the mitzvah matzah. Then a person can go ahead and use it, right? Yaitse behen. Then he can be yaitse. So that was the case of the Mishnah. So bottom line on Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. So Minohani Mili, from where do we know this from? So Amar Rabbah, the pasuk says, the Amar Kra, the pasuk says, V'shmartem la es matzahs. It says you have to go ahead and guard the matzahs. So it says matzah hamishtameres l'shem matzah. A person has to go ahead and basically guard his matzah, right? Shmura matzah, right? Has to guard his matzah for the purpose of matzah, for the purpose of moitzi matzah, not for the purpose of for a korban toda. It can't be guarded for the purpose of a nazir. It has to be guarded for the mitzvah motzei matzah. So therefore, if I made it for another reason and then I change my mind in the middle, doesn't qualify. Rather do this because this wasn't for the purpose of motzei matzah, it was for the purpose of a korban. And so that was one opinion. That was the opinion of Rabbah. Okay, now comes Rav Yosef Amar Kral. He says the pasuk Shivas Yamim Matzos Techilov. 7 days go ahead and use matzah. So matzah nechels the Shivas Yamim. It has to be a matzah which is required for 7 days. Yatzazu shein nechels the Shivas Yamim ela the Yom v'layla. Rather, they exclude these because these matzahs, once the korban is brought, you only have the day and the night to go ahead and eat these matzahs. So therefore, these aren't 7-day matzahs. You're going to ask, okay, that's very nice, but we're talking about stuff he baked, and he never brought the toda. So therefore it was never sanctified for only 1 day and 1 night. What's wrong with it being 7 days? So according to Rav Yosef, says, nevertheless, since it was made for that purpose, even though he was not makdish it, right? Even though he never sanctified it for the purpose of a toda, but since it was made with that purpose, therefore it wasn't made to be used for 7 days, and therefore it would be excluded from the mitzvah. And Tani Kavasi the Rabbah, the Tani Kavasi the Rav Yosef. We have a Bryce in support of Rabbah and a Bryce in support of Rav Yosef. Tani Kavasi the Rabbah, we have a Bryce in support of Rabbah. You might think a person can fulfill his obligation with chalas that were baked for the purpose of if you're using it with his korban toda, or for the wafers that were brought for Nazir, Tamalemar. Therefore, the pasuk says, "V'shamartem es matzos." You have to go ahead and guard the matzos. So matzah mishtameres l'shem mitzvah. Therefore, it has to be dafka a matzah that was guarded for the purpose of a mitzvah. Yatzazu, which exclude this. She'ein mishtameres l'shem matzah el l'shum zevach. Exclude this because this was not guarded for the purpose of matzah. Rather, these were made for the purpose of a korban. And Tanya Kavasi Rav Yosef, you also have a Bryce in support of Rav Yosef. You might think a person can go ahead and fill his obligation with chalos that were baked for the purpose he thought when he brings his korban toda he's going to use it, or for the wafers of a nazir. Therefore it says shivas yomim matzos tachelu. Go ahead and eat matzahs for 7 days. So matzah nechas shiva yom. The shiva, therefore, has to be a matzah that was basically baked in mind to go ahead and use it for 7 days. Yasazu, that would exclude this case. Sheina nechas shiva el yom v'layla. Rather, it would exclude this because it was only eaten for 7. That was not eaten for 7. Rather, it was baked for the purpose of he was in mind. He's only going to have 1 day and 1 night to eat it. So the Gemara says now, I have another reason why we should go ahead and exclude these chalos. The tebekle milechem aini, right? It says over there it's lechem aini mishenecha ba'aninus, right? A lechem aini, as we darshan earlier, we saw with the vav or without the vav, right? Another word of oni instead of poor is also oini, like a mourner, right? A person has to eat a bread of mourning. So that would exclude these karbanos that are brought b'simcha or eaten b'simcha. So maybe since these were baked for the purpose of simcha and not baked for the purpose of eating in ba'aninus, right, in mourning, so then maybe that should exclude it. That should be the exclusion. So my answer is no. Since it says ani without the vav, right, and therefore it means like a poor man's bread, right? So therefore, this also is a poor man's bread. It's not talking about aninus in terms of mourning. Rather, it's talking about aninus or an ani in terms of impoverished. The Gemara asks, typically the habile matzah shira. So why don't you say like this? When it comes to these matzahs, right, there's oil put in, right? This is matzah shira, right? This is like a rich man's matzah, right? And so, which we know you can't use a matzah shira for motzi matzah. So Amar Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Raviz, there's only a quarter of a lug that's put in of oil, and is divided amongst many loaves. So therefore, since it's only a small, minute amount of oil per each challah, therefore it might not qualify as matzah shira. So I have another reason. You could say like this. We said earlier, b'chol mashvas seichem, then matzah should be able to be eaten all over, right, anywhere outside Yerushalayim, everywhere. But the breads of the Toda and of the Nazir can only be eaten in Yerushalayim, right? It has a level of kedusha. You can't take it out to Tel Aviv, right? So maybe that should qualify in itself. So our answer is Samar Shlokish, Zaysameris. It must be, right? Chalas Toda Nazir Nachlim B'Nav Givon, right? There were places before, after the Mishkan when it came in it was brought to Shiloh, and then from there it was in Nov and Givon. It was a couple places, and even those places we see that the chalos and the rikikim, the loaves, were eaten there. So since those loaves were eaten there, which was outside Yerushalayim and outside Shiloh, outside the main areas where the Mishkan resided and the Beis Hamikdash, therefore we say that those were eaten there, and therefore it might make it qualify for b'chol moshva secha. So Tanya, learn Brayso, Amar Rabbi Eloi. So now going on to the second part of the Mishnah, the second qualification was if he baked it for the market and he decided, I'm just going to use it for myself, and even though his purpose was to bake it for those who were going to use it, nevertheless he himself can choose to use it for his mitzvah of matzah. So why is the difference? So Tanya Rabbi Eloi Shalti is Rabbi Eliezer Mahu Shiyatz Adam B'Chalas V'Tayda V'Kigi Nazir. Can a person go ahead and if he baked it for himself, right, for Chalas Toda V'Kigi Nazir, Samarli Loi Shemati. So but if he made it for others, he could use it. So he says, I didn't hear this. So he answered, I don't know. Lo Shemati. And Rabbi Shua, so Amrli told me, Hare Amru, they say, Chalos Toda V'Kigi Nazir Sha'asan Le'atzmo. If it was made for yourself, Ein Adam Yotzei Behen. A person does not fulfill his obligation. He cannot fulfill his obligation because, as we said earlier, whether it was according to Rabbah or Rav Yosef, because he was supposed to be for 7 days, and these were not baked for himself for 7 days, or with the fact that he wasn't guarding it for the shem matzah the whole time. So therefore, it excludes it. However, limkor b'shuk, but if you bake these challahs to sell to people coming to Yerushalayim to bring their korban toda, or a nazir who's bringing his he needs rikikim, he needs his wafers for his karbanos at the end, yaitse bahen, if he changes his mind, he can use it for the mitzvah of matzah. When I asked what it is, so Rabbi Eliezer Amar li bris hein hadvar. So when I asked him basically for an explanation, he says this is told to Moshe b'Sinai, and therefore it's Moshe b'Sinai, and this is the halach. And basically, there was no reason given. And Ikadami, some say a different version, bris hein hadvarim, where this is basically a halach Moshe b'Sinai, given to the Moshe b'Sinai, that if it was baked for others to sell, you can still use it for yourself for mitzvah of matzah. Shenamar aloi Moshe b'Sinai, said to Moshe b'Sinai, v'loi, where it says I v'loi tamabai. Right? And you don't need a reason, right? Well, so what's the reason? Yeah, it was given to Moshe b'Sinai, but what's the svara? So a time of mine. So what's the reason? So Amarabba kol l'shuk, anything that person goes ahead and takes out. He says he knows he himself he doesn't need to bring a karban toda. He wasn't a nazir. He knows not using it for himself, so he's going to go ahead and sell it to the market.
Is there a difference between creating it to sell into the market and giving it to Meiser and we're wanting to give it to Meiser as Meiser and then changing your mind for that?
Nothing to do with Meiser here. This is Fred. It was stuff, that it was already taken Meiser. This is already after the Trumas of Meiser was already taken from. This is just stuff he wants to go ahead and sell, make a quick buck.
No, I mean, if you designate something for Meiser, right?
Yeah, let me finish this line and then
sorry, go ahead.
Gemara says, so anything that's brought l'shuk, imlich, right? He can go ahead and change his mind, right? He knows he's taking it. He's not 100% going to go ahead and sell it. He might not sell it. So when he brings it, when he bakes it for those reasons, he knows it might not end up going that reason. I could change my mind. Amar imis davin. If I go ahead and sell it, I sell it. And he lo is davin. Then I'll use it. So already when he baked it, it was already in his mind that he might use it for the mitzvah of matzah. If I can sell it first, then I'll sell it. But otherwise, I'll use it for the mitzvah of matzah. So therefore, you consider it like it was made with the intentions of watching it for matzah, and it was made right for being able to eat it for 7 days. So therefore, it was different than the other case. We'll stop here at the 2 dots by the Mishnah. Now we'll get back to your question. Those of you who have to go, have a great day. So yeah, Reuven, what was your question?
So if you designate something for the Beis Hamikdash, can you change your mind and take it back?
No, but these were right. These were baked for the purpose of if people need to bring a toda, they can go in and they can buy these chalos, and then they will sanctify it for their korbanos. But they were never sanctified for that. Because you're right. If it was sanctified for that, then it's mamon hektish, and therefore you can't go ahead and take it out of hektish.
So how do you know what matzahs were baked for what?
They're baked stam, right? It was what you say as a buyer.
Yeah.
It does because the baker, right, doesn't sanctify it. So you can go ahead. So the guy who buys it, so you're asking like this. So let's say someone buys it for a challah, right? For what's it called? To use for his toda. Right. And then the buyer decides to change his mind. Right. And say for matzah. All right, good question. So you can say like this: since when I bought it, it was not for the purpose of matzah. It's not matzah shmura. It was not being washed for the shmura. Therefore, I won't be able to do it.
Oh, I thought that was just like not l'chatchila, but like a higher status of matzah. I didn't know that was the.
No, but over here we're using for the pasuk, right? The whole thing is that since it wasn't being washed for the mitzvah of matzah, it was only being washed, right, for to use for a toda. So therefore, it wouldn't qualify.
Okay.
Right?
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Everyone have a good day.